Okay, so in this tutorial, what we're going to cover is how to take our SketchUp model and essentially kind of cut it up into several parts so that we can create some orthographic drawings, things like floor plans, sections, elevations, and so on. Now I've gone ahead and added all the materials that I wanted to add in my project. I painted some of the walls. I added some of this kind of this wood material. I didn't get um, too detailed. Kind of go around. You see just similar things. I still have parts of my incomplete open cubes. Inside here, I have my roof. When I hide my roof, I don't have any furnishings inside here. I do have a section for an area for my bathroom. And then we have the stairs. And then down here, we have the continuation of the stairs. We have a little dining table. We have the kitchen that we've created. And then on the opposite end, a little kind of sofa with a little credenza and a TV. Okay, so I didn't add too many objects from the 3D warehouse. But more importantly, I am done with the modeling. Okay, so this project, as far as the 3D model goes, is completed. And that's really where you have to be in order to watch or in order to follow along in this tutorial, because we're going to set up the model so that we can then take it into layout and finish up the project to create the drawings. Okay. Now I'm going to need a total of, essentially it's going to be 12 drawings that we're going to be creating today or in this tutorial. One of them is the exterior perspective. We're going to be doing 2 floor plans. So one first floor, one second floor. The same thing with our reflective ceiling plan. So first floor reflective ceiling plan, second floor reflective ceiling plan. We're going to do 4 interior elevations, 1 section, and then 2 exterior elevations. Okay. So when you add all that up, it's going to be 12, essentially 12 drawings. Now, what we're going to be doing is taking our SketchUp model and cutting different section planes, setting up scenes, creating and kind of saving the views. And then once we've created the scenes, we're going to go into SketchUp layout, which is a kind of secondary program. It's kind of an additional program that complements SketchUp. Okay, in SketchUp layout, it is simply just kind of a layout type tool. Think InDesign, maybe a little kind of PowerPoint esque in a way, but it really works well with SketchUp, and it allows us to take the views and take the scenes, take things that we've saved in SketchUp, and then apply it on a sheet of paper, which we can then dimension, annotate, and then eventually print and hand off to a client or a subcontractor, whoever it is that you need to pass this information on. Okay. So some of these steps that we're going to be covering, I'll do my best to kind of explain as to why we're doing them, but a lot of it may not make sense until we get into SketchUp layout, because a lot of the things that we're working on is going to be to kind of set us up to make the process in SketchUp layout a little bit easier. Okay. So the very first step is going to actually be to set up our SketchUp style. Now, we haven't covered styles. It is over here in the default tray, or for on a Mac, you're going to have to go up to, I believe it's Windows and then to styles. Go ahead and minimize these. So by default, not by default, I'm not sure if you guys remember, the very first time we opened up SketchUp, it asked us to pick a template, and we chose architectural design style or architectural design template. And what this does is it gives us the kind of the coloration, the graphics, the visuals. So this beige kind of ground, this kind of washed out sky background. That's all part of the architectural design style. We have different types of styles. We have landscape, which you can see changes some of the graphics. It also begins to change some of the profile lines. If we go to 3D printing style, if we were to go to wireframe, X-ray, right? Each of these styles gives us something different. We can even go into the pull down, and it has all sorts of crazy styles. We do something like that. Sketchy edges. This is kind of fun. This is a fun kind of way to take your SketchUp model and print it out and make it look as if you actually sketched it. It's also a good way to kind of print this out and trace over it, and then illustrate over it as well. Okay. But the one we're going to be looking at is still back in the default styles, back where we were in architectural design style. And it's actually the one it's the third one from the top left. It's called construction documentation style. I believe on a Mac, this order is slightly different. But if you go to if you're in the default style tab, you should see you might have to search around for it. But inside of the default styles tab, you will find the construction documentation style. And that's the one we want to be in. So I'm going to go ahead and click. And the reason why we want that is we're going to be doing something that relatively resembles construction documents. Actually, it is in a lot of ways a construction documentation. And construction documents essentially are blueprints, right? Blueprints is a term that a lot of people have come to understand and define as what we do. But the reality is we actually within the profession haven't done blueprints since like the 1970s. We found out that the blueprint, the paper was actually blue, and what made the paper blue is actually cancerous and really, really toxic. And so we stopped using actual blueprints quite a while ago, yet society and people outside of the industry still refer to them as blueprints. But now what we do is we do construction documents, okay? Which seems, for lack of a better definition, really essentially is just blueprints, okay? So since we're going to be doing these types of drawings, we really want to have a clear white background. I could even go up to view and hide my axes. And so here really just kind of it separates, or it really defines my project as only showing me the building, right? Now I can go into edit, and I personally like to take profiles off. Actually, no, let's go profiles down to, it's one of these two. Is it edges? No, I like edges. It's the profiles I'd like to turn off. It just, when we turn profiles on, it adds kind of a thickness to the line work that makes it look a bit more cartoonish. If you still can't really see the difference, let's move this up. Let's bump this up to say 8. Right? And that's what we're referring to. Now, if I turn this off, it looks a lot cleaner. You could play around with a lot of these. So if we were to bring this down to 1, you could kind of play around with these extensions. And some of these things really help, right? These are the little extensions, depending on the effect that you're kind of going for. But I'm going to go ahead and turn off profiles, turn off extensions. You could add endpoints if you wanted to, and so on. But this is kind of the settings that I want to do, that I want to have. Okay. Now, the very first drawing on the list of drawings that we need to have is actually a perspective, as an exterior. It's an exterior perspective. And this is really what we call our money shot, right? We define it as our money shot render or our money shot perspective. And it's the angle that you feel looks the best in your project. And you've been the one who's been working on it, so you probably know best, right? I'm probably not going to want a perspective that looks at the building from this side. So look around your building, and I tend to like this angle, somewhere around here. Something like that. Okay. And now the other thing too is that all of your renders should be taken from the perspective at a human eye height. Okay. So oftentimes I see renders taken from this position, right? Or some odd position that would never be, that no one will ever actually view the project at, right? And so those renders always tend to look odd and out of place just because it's an angle that we're not that familiar with. But if we situate it down here, it actually kind of grounds the drawing. It actually makes it feel like we're going to enter the building. Now, what I'm going to do, and actually as a side note, if for whatever reason, notice that I still have my incomplete cubes in the background. If for whatever reason those get in the way, maybe I want my perspective to be at this angle, but I have these in the background, you want to hide them. So just do a cross window, right click, and hide them. Okay, because you don't want those coming out. Okay, so for my exterior perspective, I'm going to go up to camera, position camera. Okay, and the icon is a little stick, or not, kind of a little character with an X. And essentially, the surface that I click on is going to be where the camera is being placed. Now, before I click, if you look down here, it says height offset and it says 5'6". If we wanted to, we could change it. I could say, give me a height offset of 4 feet, right? And then it would, when I click here, it's going to give me a height offset to replace the camera 4 feet above that surface. Now, the height offset is actually correct at 5'6". Now, this does not mean that the person is 5'6". It means the eye height is 5'6". So remember that our eyes are lower than the actual height itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the surface. And then look at the icon. It's a little eyeball. So I could click, and without moving, it's giving me this orbit. And I'm kind of orbiting, but it's really just looking up at the project. Okay. Now I feel like I'm a little too close here. So I want to back out. There's two things I could do. I could kind of orbit and zoom out and get out of this kind of view. Or I could also go up to camera and walk. Okay. Now using the walk tool is a little bit challenging. It does take a little practice, but it is kind of nice because it allows us to move around without ever moving the eye height, right? So our eye height is always staying at 5'6". Okay. But it is a bit challenging to navigate. I'm going to go ahead and go back to camera, position camera, and I'm going to go a bit farther out, somewhere down out here. And I'm going to move. There we go. That's the view that I like. So I'm going to go ahead. And now that I have a view that I like, go somewhere like this, I'm going to save this view. I'm going to go up to View, Animation, Add Scene. Now it's going to ask me, or it's going to give me a warning saying you're creating or updating a scene and have not saved the changes you made to your style. So one of the things we changed to our style, actually, we went from the architecture template or the architecture style to the construction documentation style. And then we also made some changes in here as well. So that's just what it's telling you. It's letting us know that we've made changes to our style. I'm going to say, do nothing to save changes. And then please don't show me this again. I don't want this popping up every single time. So I'll hit create scene. Now, typically, whenever you make a change to a style, SketchUp wants you to create a new style so that it saves those changes, right? So that you would have, say, construction documentation style as the default one. But if I made any changes, so if I took off profiles and extensions, then SketchUp would want us to make a separate construction documentation style that has those settings. And then if we were to make any other changes, it would ask us to make a new style for those changes, right? That might become an issue for us later down the line. It might not, but it is something important to know. So here we have scene 1. Now, when we've saved a scene, we can essentially orbit around, move around. And then when we want to, we could go back, hit scene 1, and it's going to take us back to our actual scene. Okay. Now it is called a scene. Now, why did we go profiles? Let's deselect profiles. Let's right click and update. I shouldn't have done that. Here, let's go ahead. Nope. Now let's go scene 1. I know why. All right, let's delete this scene. This goes back to exactly what I was saying. So it wants us to create, and this is something new within the last, I'd say 2020 version. It's really frustrating and annoying, especially because it hasn't required us to do this for the last like 10 years. But I'm going to go ahead and make a change, right? So we've now changed the default style. I'm going to go up to view, animation, add scene. And hopefully that didn't give us any issues. So let's see. And it did. Okay, let me go ahead and pause this so I could figure this out and you guys don't have to watch me through this. All right, so I figured out what it is that we have to, do. And that essentially is to create a new construction documentation style, which is what I was referring to earlier. I was hoping to kind of bring up that little dialog box that asked us if we want to create a new style, but we're just gonna have to do it manually. So what I'm going to do is create a new style. It's very similar to creating material. It's actually fairly simple. We're just gonna hit create new style. And it's not going to do anything. So if you clicked on it, that's it, right? It's not going to give you any prompt or window. It's not even going to reference or look like anything else. If you just clicked on it once, you've already created it, okay? Then what I'm going to do is turn off the profiles, which is essentially the one change I wanted to make. And then I will actually, let's try this out. We're going to turn off the axes as well. And then I'm going to hit the update button, right? So it's the one right below where I select to create new style. I'll hit the update button. Okay. And that should have saved it. So now I'll go to view, animation, add scene. Let me go ahead and orbit around. And now when I go back to scene 1, there we go. My profiles are still turned off. My axes is still turned off as well. Okay. Now, right now that I created scene 1, essentially what I've done is I've saved a camera view in this one location. Okay. Now, really what we're doing, or we're using the tools that SketchUp has in order to create an actual kind of fly-through animation, which is something else that we're not going to cover, but it's the same, it's through the same exact steps. And maybe when we're done with this, I'll show you what I mean by doing an animation. We could save different scenes or essentially camera points, and then SketchUp will kind of tie that all in together and create a little animation. Okay. So that's why they call it scene as opposed to screenshot or as opposed to camera shot or something like that. Okay. So we've created our first scene. Now, the next thing is to begin to create the orthographic drawings. So floor plans, sections, elevations. We're going to start off with our floor plans. Now, in order to do this, we're going to need to use our section plane tools. Okay, I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this out and close it just in case you guys don't have it available. I think by default now, and again, this is more recent, the section boxes is part of SketchUp. But if it's not, if you don't find it, you can right click on here and then come down and select section. Okay, you'll get this little window. If you click anywhere in this blue bar, you click, drag, and bring it all the way to the top. It's going to dock right at the top. Okay, essentially it's these 4 commands. Now, if you're on a Mac, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to have to go up to, I believe it's tools. And then there's a tools button, and it's going to prompt a big kind of large window with every single icon in SketchUp. And you're essentially going to have to go and locate each one of these icons. It's a bit frustrating and annoying that along with everything else that you guys have had to deal with for the Mac users of how these buttons are not the same. I don't know why they didn't create it the same way. Clearly, there must be some sort of issues with the codes, but with the coding behind it. But it is an annoying step that you guys are going to have to do. So you're going to look for these 4 icons. Okay. One of them is the section plane, the display section planes, display section cuts, and then display section fills. So we're going to go through all 4 of these right now. So I'm going to start off with the section plane. Okay, I'm going to click right there. And then what I will do is as I move my cursor, okay, I'm not holding down on anything. I'm just moving the cursor. I can go ahead, and what this will do is it'll cut the building along the surface that my cursor is hovering over, which is why it's kind of going from red to green to blue, depending on where my cursor is placed. Now, if I want a floor plan, then essentially I'm going to want to do a horizontal cut, okay, that is looking down. And let me take a minute, actually, because I understand this is still an introductory course. So I want to take a minute and explain all of these drawings, starting off with the floor plan. A floor plan is as if you were to take a building and slice it and do a horizontal slice. Typically, not always, but typically, these slices or this kind of cut through the building is 4 feet above the finished floor. Finished floor is a term that we use to define the actual kind of top surface of a floor. There's several surfaces, especially when we start getting into kind of construction, detailing, and building a building. There's different components to a floor. We have floor joists, we have the subfloor, then there might be an additional subfloor based off the material that you're using. And then finally, the very top surface, what we actually see, is known as the finished floor. Okay. Floor plans are placed, or floor plans are horizontal cuts that are taken 4 feet above the finished floor of that floor. So if I'm standing on the second floor, then it's 4 feet above the finished floor on my second floor. Okay, so that's what a floor plan is, and it's a plan that is looking down. After this, we're going to be doing reflective ceiling plans, and those are plans that are looking up. So the benefit of that is that we could actually see the ceiling. And that's important to know because it's important to know where the light fixtures are going to be placed. If we were to get into more detail, if there's any protrusions, if there's any kind of detailing or any kind of architectural elements in the ceilings, or any vents, air conditioning, HVAC vents, different things like that would all show in a reflective ceiling plan, which is what we're going to be showing next. So since I want a floor plan, I want a horizontal cut that is 4 feet above the finished floor. So we're going to start off by placing our cursor on the actual finished floor. I'm going to click right in here, and let's call this first floor plan. And we're going to give it a symbol of just 1, leave it like that, and hit OK. Okay. And now you see that it gave me this section plane. Now it's this large one because it's also, even though we have the objects hidden, it's also cutting through the incomplete open cubes. If you remember, I hid those earlier. I'm going to go ahead and use the move tool. So first off, we select it. So when it's selected, it's blue. It use the move tool. And it doesn't matter at this point where I grab it. I'm just going to click once and move the cursor up slowly. And you could begin to see how it's actually cutting through the building. Okay. Now, it was placed right on that top surface because that's where I clicked. So if I move the cursor to go up and I just type in 4 feet, enter, it's going to give me the floor plan cut at 4 feet above the finished floor. Okay. So we use the section plane for this, but we have these other tools that are important. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at them. The first one is display section planes. So when I turn that off, it's essentially turning off the section plane, but it's not deactivating the section cut. That's what this next one is. What it is going to be, display section cuts. So I could turn that off, and now it looks as if nothing has happened to my model. I can turn that back on, and now it's cut to the location of the section plane. I could do the other way around where I turn off the section cut, but I still want to see the section plane. Okay. And then the last one, let's go ahead and take a look here. The last one is display section fill. Okay, so if I turn that off, you notice how I could actually see through the walls. And that again is because in SketchUp, all it is really lines and surfaces. So there is no solid object inside or solid wall inside here. And so what SketchUp will do is it'll create a fill. Okay, it'll create a fill in between any object that it's cutting through. So, or any surfaces that it's cutting through. Now this fill is more appropriately known as a poche within the profession. So if we say, or if your instructor or anyone ever says, can you poche your walls? What we're really saying is, can you fill your walls in with a solid color? Okay. Now, what I do want to do is I'm going to go over here to, where is it? I believe it's in the mix. I don't do this one. So we'll go, sorry, not edit, not mix, edit, and then we'll go to, I believe it's the middle one. Nope. Okay, sorry, it's the last one here. Notice how we get these gray walls. Typically, the poche actually isn't gray. The poche should be black. So right here where it says section fill, I'm going to go ahead and click inside here and just bring this all the way down so I get a nice solid black. I'll hit OK. All right. Now, this one change is a change to the documentation style. Okay. So we can go ahead and create a new style. And then it's going to save these. Notice how I can't hit the update button because it's a new style with that change already made. But this is what we're going to want. We want a black poche as opposed to a solid gray. Okay. So now that we've become familiar with these commands, we could go ahead and begin to move a little bit faster. So essentially we have our first floor plan. We need to save this view at this point. So the way we're going to do that is go up to camera, standard view, top. Okay. And now it gives us a top-down view, which is what a floor plan should be. However, a floor plan is an orthographic drawing. What an orthographic drawing means is that it has no perspective to it. The reason why that's important is because these drawings, floor plans, sections, elevations, they should be scalable. We should be able to take a ruler, or what we call an architectural scale, and actually measure it once it's printed out and determine what the actual, and by measuring it, we could determine what the actual length is. But if there's a perspective on the floor plan or on any of the drawings, that's going to distort. It's going to distort my measurements, right? So for example, if I was to try to measure this wall here, right? This wall where my refrigerator is being placed, would you measure it from, and if I had a perspective, if I gave you the perspective this way, do you measure the wall from this corner to that corner? Or would you measure it from this inside corner and try to locate the inside corner here, right? We could obviously tell that both of these dimensions would be different and vice versa. I mean, if we were to do the same thing over here, this is a little bit easier to, oops, let's go to camera view. This one's a little bit easier to use. So because if we look at, this point to there or this point to down here, it's not the same length. So that means that every time we do an orthographic, or every time we do a technical drawing, it should always be in an orthographic view, which means there should be no perspective and it should be a flat drawing. So we've set up the camera to be on top. Now what we need to do is go to camera, parallel projection. And now you can see there is no perspective on this drawing. Everything is flat. Okay, and this is what a floor plan would look like. All right, so I'm going to go up to view, animation, add scene. And there we have it. Okay, we have our first one. Now we have to be careful because there is the difference between parallel projection and perspective. So we're in parallel projection whenever we do these top or front or left or side orthographic drawings. But if you try to model, so let's go ahead and deactivate the cut. If we try to orbit around in a parallel projection, look how weird my model looks, right? And that's because it's trying to flatten out a three-dimensional object. So it's starting to get really odd and weird. So if that ever happens to you, or if the model itself just looks odd to you, then chances are that you have to go to perspective view, okay? All right. So the next step is we have the first floor. We now have to do the second floor. So I'm going to go and create a new section plane. And this time I'm going to select the second floor because, well, we could do it one or two ways. It's 4 feet above the section floor, right? I can zoom in here. And luckily I have a balcony that I could use as a reference, but if you don't have a balcony, you can try to move inside the space so that you can place the cursor on the actual floor. And if we were to do that, I'm not going to do it because it's going to mess up the amount of sections that I have. But if I was to click here, it's going to cut a floor right there along the second floor. And then I could move that section plane and go up 4 feet. The other thing that we can do is create another section plane this way. We'll go ahead and call this second floor plan. I'm going to go ahead and give this symbol 2. So there's that one. I want to select 2, use the move tool. So how do we know what 4 feet above the second floor is? Well, we know our measurements because we did the incomplete open cubes and we did 12 feet. So we know that the top here is 12 feet. So if we want to go 12 feet plus 4 feet above that, then that means we have to place our cursor, or that we need to use the move tool and go up a total of 16 feet. Enter. And there you have it. Okay. So now we have our floor plan 4 feet above our finished floor on the second floor. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn off the section plane. The reason why we turn them off is if you look closely at the material when we have the section planes turned on versus when we turn them off, the colors are much stronger, they're much bolder. And so we want the best color quality when doing our drawings. So That's why we turn off the section plane. We want to leave the section cuts on. We want to leave the section fills on so we get that poche. So now I'm just going to set up my cameras. So I'll go to camera, standard view top. Now I still get this perspective. You probably won't get the perspective, right? I got the perspective because I was trying to prove a point and show you guys what a 3D model looks like in parallel projection. But if you never change this, then there's no need to come back and change it. Okay, oops. And so here is my second floor. So now I'll go up to view, animation, add scene. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. We have scene 1. We have scene 2. And then we have scene 3. Okay. So let's go ahead and keep going. Notice that also that these scenes, the way they kind of go from one to the other, is more of an animation. So if you ever wanted to make an animation, it's just a matter of selecting your scene. So go one scene here, then you move around the space, and then you create another second scene here, and then you would move over here and create scene 3 here, and so on and so on. And then SketchUp will create an animation from scene 1 to scene 2 to scene 3 and 4 and so on. We're just using the scenes a bit differently for the objective that we're trying to complete. So here we've completed the first 2 scenes. Next up is going to be the reflective ceiling plan. Okay. Now I said that floor plans are cut 4 feet above the finished floor. Well, reflective ceiling plans are cut 7 feet 6 inches above the finished floor, and they're looking up. So what I'm going to do, and now this is going to be a tough one, because as I mentioned, here, let's go ahead and start. We'll create a section plane. The section cut wants to create a section on the surface that I'm on, and it's pointing up, right? I'm sorry, it's pointing down. Oops. So that means that we need to actually place the cursor on a section that's at the bottom of a floor. This way, the section is pointing upward. The problem is that if I create a section at this point, I'm going to need to come down 7 feet 6 inches. Okay, or I'm sorry, not 7 feet 6 inches. I'm going to have to come down so that it's placed at 7 feet 6 inches. Okay. So at that point, it's one of 2 things. We could do one or 2 things. We could do some math and say, what's 12 feet? What's 7 feet 6 inches minus 12 feet? Or we can just use a guide really quickly, pull a guide that goes up 7 feet 6 inches. And then say, okay, what's the height from this point? And I'm selecting that point because that's the bottom, that's aligned to the bottom of my surface, and bring this down. And my answer is 3 feet 8 inches. So when I create the surface, I'm going to pull down 3 feet 8 inches. Go delete the guide. So we're going to hit the section marker, click right here. And this time we're going to call it, we're going to abbreviate it RCP1. So reflective ceiling plan 1. Let's give it a symbol 3. Hit OK. And now you could see the symbol 3. I'm going to go ahead and select that and use the move tool and bring it down 3 feet 8. Enter. And now I'm going to adjust. Actually, let's turn off the section plane. Go up to camera, standard view, bottom. And then camera, parallel projection. And there we have our reflective ceiling plan. Now in this model, I didn't add any light fixtures. I didn't add any venting, ventilation, air ducts or anything like that. So it's a rather boring reflective ceiling plan. And that's okay. I'm not grading on how interesting your ceiling plans are, more than anything, I want you guys to know the tools and have the skills to create reflective ceiling plans if and when you need to create them. Okay. So now something happened here. Oh, we went from scene 1. So let's go to scene 3. Okay, sorry. Let's go ahead and bring this back. If you ever want to activate a an old scene, or sorry, a section, you simply click on the profile of that line and then double click on it. Okay, so here's the problem that I saw. And yeah, so here's the problem that I saw is that I have a gray poche when I knew that we've already changed it to a black one. The problem was that because I was trying to show you guys, you know, the scenes, how you go from scene 1 to scene 2 to scene 3. I forgot that by doing that, by selecting the different scenes, we're also selecting different styles, because you remember scene 1 had one style and we didn't change the poche until scene 2. So if I go back to scene 1, it's going back to the original construction documentation style. And here we see section fill. If I would go to scene 2, you see the section fill goes here. So that's why when we go to scene 3, it's still black. Now it just happened that when I created that reflective ceiling section cut, I was still actually in scene 1. Okay, so that's okay. You guys shouldn't run into that problem because you're probably not going to be going back and forth. But it's still something to be aware of. So here, let's go ahead and bring the section planes back up. I'm going to double click. There we go, section 3. Remember, this is happening because I'm now back on scene 3. Now go up to camera, standard view bottom. Let's go ahead and turn off the section plane. There we go. That's what we want. So now I'm going to go up to view, animation, add scene. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time. This time around, we're going to go from the bottom. Actually, you know what? We could actually select this surface as well. So I'm going to use the section marker, come down here, create a new section right there. Let's call this RCP2, symbol number 4, hit OK. And then I have to select number 4, use the move tool. And now I'm going to go up 7 feet, 6 inches. Go to camera, standard view, bottom. Turn off my section planes. Okay, zoom in a little bit, and then camera, view, animation, add scene. So now we have scene 1, scene 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these are floor plans. These are reflective ceiling plans. If you want to rename these, we can select, we can right click on them and select rename, and we can rename them here. We can also, in the scenes tab in the default tray, you should be able to select one, select them. Go ahead and minimize this. Select them, and then down here at the bottom, it says name. We can change, we could highlight that and change the name. I'm not going to take the time to do that. I've kind of memorized which scene is which one. Okay. But now I'm going to go ahead and come back here. So we have our reflective ceiling plan. Oops. We have the reflective ceiling plan. We have and our floor plans. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is create, let's go ahead and create our elevations. So elevations are drawings that they're orthographic drawings that are looking directly straight at the building. Okay. elevations are really good to measure vertical heights on the exterior, on the outside of the buildings. Okay, so when we're talking about building elevations, we are referring to the exterior of the building. Later on, we're going to be doing interior elevations, which then refer to the elevation views of the interior spaces. But a elevation view is a vertical view. It's a view of the actual surfaces, the vertical surfaces of the building. Okay. And again, the benefit here is that we could take measurements, heights. So we could say, hey, this window should be placed, and then show a dimension 42 inches from this height. And this window is X amount of feet high, and so on. Okay. Now we're still in parallel projection. So what I can do is just go up to camera, and let's go, we have front, back, left, right. Let me explain that for a minute. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to get out of perspective. And I'm also going to have to bring back my axes. Okay. Now this might mess up my next couple of scenes, so I might have to go back and make these changes again. Again, I'm not sure why SketchUp requires us now to make these scenes, but it's, as you can tell, it's really frustrating to kind of go back and create, sorry, not scenes, styles. SketchUp is making us create new styles every single time we make changes, and it's really annoying. Anyways, we have camera views, okay? And the camera views are, we have the top, bottom, which we've used. Then we have front, back, left, and right, okay? How do you know what's front, what's back, what's left, and what's right? Well, it's based on the axes. So if you are standing along the red axis, looking into this positive quadrant, looking in this direction, then that's your front. Okay, so as long as you remember the red line, if you're standing on there, that's the front, and you're looking this way, that's the front view. Everything else is going to fall in place. So if that's the front view, then that means if you're looking this way, that's my left view. If I'm looking this way, that's my right view. And if I'm looking from the opposite side, that's going to be my back view. So if I was go camera front, that's what I see. If I was to go to camera, let's go camera left, that's what I see, and so on. Okay. So let's go ahead and turn off my axes again. We're going to go, and I want to do, we need to create 2 exterior elevations of our choice. Your exterior elevations should be elevations of your most interesting, they should be the most interesting aspects of your elevation. So in other words, this to me, this front is the most interesting kind of side. And I'd probably pick the right side here. The back side essentially is a pretty generic, simple form, and the same kind of over here. It's somewhat interesting. It's not as interesting as the opposite side over here. There's much more going, there's many more things going on this side. So it's up to you though. You choose the sides that you want. So I'm going to go up to camera, standard view front, and then camera parallel projection. Because if we don't, right, we end up having that same issue. The window height on this wall, because it's closer and we have perspective views, is going to be larger than, say, the heights that are farther back. Okay. Orthographic flattens everything out, or parallel projection. SketchUp calls it parallel projection, but we call it orthographics. Orthographics flattens everything out so that everything is at the same, so that there is no distortion. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and that's my building elevation. I'm going to go to view, animation, add scene. Now we're going to create one more. We'll go to view, sorry, camera, standard view. And I believe I said it was my right view. Yep, right side view. and create another scene here. View, animation, add scene. So now we have our 2 floor plans, and you know what, I should be able to view these. So 2 floor plans, first floor, second floor, reflective ceiling plan of the first floor, reflective ceiling plan of the second floor, and then building elevation. Oops. Ugh. I'm really not liking these styles. Okay. I'm sorry, you guys. I really hate. I really hope you're not getting confused with all of these things. So what's going on is my elevations is now not showing me a full elevation because in these other scenes, we were showing the section cuts, right? We were actually cutting up the building, and that's why we are seeing these section cuts. Notice right here, section cuts are turned on. When we move to a elevation, section cuts is still turned on. Okay. So for that reason, we're going to have to deselect section cuts for elevations for this one view and create a new style for it and so on. So the easiest thing is I'm going to have to go ahead and delete these 2 elevations. We'll delete these 2 elevations. We're going to go ahead and create a new elevation. We'll consider this practice. We'll go up to camera, standard view front. We'll deselect section cuts. Okay. And now we'll go to, and then we'll create a new scene based off that and go to view, animation, add scene. So if we go to scene 5, which is the reflective ceiling plan, and that shows a section cut. If we go to scene 6, because we created a new style, we created a new style, we should now be able to see the section, the building elevation. Okay. I apologize. This is a new change with style, so I myself am still getting familiar with the tool. So I apologize for all this confusion, but essentially, if you make any types of changes, you need to create a new scene. Okay, so create a new scene and then make the changes. All right, so we're gonna go camera, standard view. Now I already forgot, right? Yeah. Camera, view, animation, add scene. So we have floor plans, we have building elevations. Now the next thing is going to be our section cut. Okay. So a section cut is similar to a floor plan, except that instead of a horizontal cut looking down, a section is a vertical cut looking vertically at the building. Okay. Now, where the section cut is placed and in what direction it's facing is entirely up to you. So we're going to go ahead and create a section. Typically, what we're looking for is really the most interesting aspect or the most interesting kind of space through the building. That's where your section cut should be placed. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of start right here. We'll just call this, it actually is a section, so we'll just call it section. And I think I'm at symbol number 5 at this point. So I'll hit OK. Okay, so I just selected the very first surface, and I did that so that I can kind of move this section plane in. And I'm looking at the section cut, and I'm just trying to find out at what point do I find it really interesting? And I'm really I'm a little bit intrigued at this point, just because of that staircase and that really high, tall volume. And that's a space that maybe I didn't really fully understand when I was designing. I wasn't too aware of how tall or the size of that volume. And now in the section cut, I see it's like, oh wow, that's actually going to be a really nice volume. That's a really nice space. Okay. And that's exactly why we do section cuts, because it allows us to understand verticality. It allows us to understand the scale of objects, or sorry, scale of spaces on the interior side. Okay. So we're going to go ahead. Let's keep moving on. And then, yeah, none of this more is that interesting. So I would either say here, or this is kind of interesting as well. So you choose wherever you want to place your section. I'm actually going to go, what do I find more interesting? I'm going to go right here. All right. And I'm going to say this is my section. This is going to be my section cut. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the display section planes. Zoom in and view animation add scenes. Okay. At this point, I'm so paranoid about these styles. I'm just going to go to scene 7 and then see what that transition is. Yep, and it doesn't show it to me. So let's go ahead and display section cuts. Okay, and we're going to create a new style. And I think we're going to have to update. So if you created before we were making these changes and then creating I'm going to view animation add scene and then creating the style. I'm sorry, creating the scene. So we were creating styles, then adding the scenes. In this case, we created the scene first and then decided to change the style. So now we need to update this scene. So I'm going to right click and update. Let's see if that did it. Scene 7 and scene 8. There we go. Okay. So again, every time you make a change, we need to update the styles. Now, I think the best way of going about it is really just the way I'm doing it right now, is every time you create a scene, go to the previous one. Okay. Go to the previous scene and then select the new scene and make sure that it works properly. If it works properly, then move on to the next step. If it doesn't, then it means that you have to create a new style, either update it or update the scene. Okay. And again, if you created the scene first and then made the change to the style, then you have to update the style and then right click and update the scene. If you don't create the scene first and you make the changes to the style first, then you could go ahead and create the style first and then create the scene afterwards. And then there's no need to update the scene. Okay. So now we have elevations, we have our section cuts. The last step is going to be our interior elevations. Okay. Now, interior elevations is essentially a mixture of an elevation and a section. Okay. Interior elevations are vertical views of a particular interior space. Okay. So a building section shows us all of the vertical walls of the entire building. And this is really good because it allows us to understand how, maybe the kitchen and the dining room table might be connected up here to something that's going on the second floor, or how these sliding doors might be connected somehow visually to my windows down below there. So it's a relationship between both kind of interior volumes, but also a relationship between what's happening between the floors. Interior elevations is very similar to a section, except that except that interior elevations will be looking strictly at one room, okay, within the building. So sections is for the entire building, interior elevations is for the individual room. Okay. So you can choose which room you want to do an interior elevation of, but similar to the section, it should be an elevation view of the room that has the most detail. There's the most things going on. And in my situation, in my case, the kitchen really is going to be where I'm going to want to do my interior elevations. Just there's a lot more going on. The rest of my building is pretty bare. I don't want to move any of these. So once you've created, by the way, once you've created these scenes, you don't want to move any of the section markers, simply because if you move any of these, then the scenes themselves will reflect those changes. Okay. But going back to my interior elevations, I'm going to want to do the interior elevations of my kitchen. So that's the room I'm going to pick. However, SketchUp does not have a tool that's going to allow us to only pick out the kitchen interior elevation. So what we're really going to have to do is create several different section cuts, building section cuts through the kitchen. And then when we go into layout, we're essentially going to have to crop those section cuts so that it reflects and shows only the room that we want it to show. Okay. So we're going to end up creating several section cuts for this. I'm going to go ahead and let's deactivate the section planes. We're going to create a section plane here, and I'm going to go, if I wanted to, and it's a little bit trickier, that's why I could try to move the camera to go inside, but it's a lot easier to just place the section plane on any of these, the surface on the exterior side. We're going to call this interior elevation 1. And I think symbol 6, hit OK. I'm going to select this, use the move tool. And so the reason why I'd say it's easier is because I can just place the section plane inside SketchUp so that I have it, and then I could go ahead and move it into the location that I wanted to move it to. And so I'm going to go ahead and maybe place it right there. Okay. And really what I'm looking at is right inside here. And so what we're going to try to do is capture every single wall. Okay. So interior elevations, we're really looking at only that one space, only that one room, and really looking at the details inside that one room. So I'm going to want to orient my camera, standard view. If I remember correctly, this should be left. There we go. Okay. Now we have all of these other section markers. Okay. It's really kind of getting a bit crowded because we've now created several. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the section planes. And I'm going to save this, right? It looks like a building section because it is a building section. We're seeing all aspects of the building. But when I go into SketchUp layout, I'm really just going to crop everything else out and really just show this portion right here. So I'm going to save this as a scene, view, animation, add scene. And then again, let's go back to the last one and then go to scene 9 and let's see if anything has changed. Nothing's changed. So now we can go ahead and move forward. I'm going to come back out here and then I'll do another section plane. This time we'll go right here. We'll call this inter elevation 2. Symbol is number 7. Come on. Hit OK. Select the symbol here, use the move tool. And I'm going to place it right there's fine. Adjust my camera, standard view back. Turn off my display section planes. Okay, and there's the kitchen. So I'm going to go to camera, view, animation, add scene. Let's go to scene 9. Okay, scene 10. Perfect. Now we need the opposite view. So we need to cut in the opposite direction. So we'll go section cut. I'll place another one right here. We'll go inter elevation 3, symbol 8, hit OK. Select the section plane, use the move tool. I'm going to create a section right there. Now we'll go camera. Now I'm lost. I think that's front. Front, there we go. Turn off the section planes. I'm going to view, animation, add scene. Okay. And I actually don't have a fourth wall, right? This is my third wall. Let's go scene 10, scene 11. I'm sorry, I'm just going back to the last one just to make sure. If we bring this back up. So my kitchen really only has 3 walls. It has this one, the front where the sink is, where the stove is, and then where the refrigerator is. But for the assignment, I am asking for 4 walls. So let's go ahead and just complete it. And the one I'm missing is in that direction. So enter elevation 4, symbol 9. Okay, and I'm going to grab it, use the move tool. And I'm just going to go that direction. And now this is camera, standard view, right? There we go. And there we have it. We're going to go to view, animation, add scene. So now we have a total of 12 scenes. Okay. We're going to start at the beginning with our elevation. We're going to go scene 2 with our floor plan. Scene 3, second floor plan. Scene 4, reflective ceiling plan for the first floor, reflective ceiling plan for the second floor. Then we have our front elevation. We have our right elevation. We have building section. We have interior elevation 1, elevation 2, elevation 3, and then essentially elevation number 4. Okay. So we've created all of our drawings. We've created all of our scenes. At this point, we're ready to go into SketchUp layout. All right. So the first thing you want to do is hit File, Save, and we are officially done with SketchUp. Okay. We're not coming back to SketchUp from this point on. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here just because it's been a pretty lengthy one. And then we'll do in the next tutorial, we'll cover SketchUp layout. Okay.